Welcome in to the Big Time Throwcast, now also on the PFF podcast. If you guys are listening to us for the first time, it's all about quarterbacks here on the Big Time Throwcast. I am Steve Palazzolo, joined as always by Zac Robinson, former NFL quarterback, superstar at Oklahoma State. So if you guys, again, we're just joining the Pro podcast, we have our own Big Time Throwcast, a whole separate feed. If you guys have been listening on there, thank you very much. And if this is your first time in the Pro podcast, welcome. Our goal here is to break down quarterback play like never before, getting into some serious detail, what goes into the PFF grades, and Zac brings some great insight as to what he's seeing from a schematic standpoint, from a skill set standpoint. So we really hope you guys enjoy it. Before we dive in, have to mention my favorite new way to play fantasy football. It's all about a new best ball league or a best ball format called Draft. All you have to do is go to the App Store, search Draft, or go to playdraft.com, and you'll have a chance to get into this best ball format, which is essentially set it and forget it. Draft a team, 18 NFL players, and you can go ahead and actually draft for multiple sports. They have MLB, they have even golf, they have NBA, NHL. But you draft your team, and that's it. You don't have to worry about trades. You don't have to worry about the waiver wire, injuries, the best ball format. They will take your best players every single week. And the best part about it is you have a chance to win real money. So you put up a little bit of real money with a chance to win real money. In PFF, we have a very special offer for you today. If you use the promo code PFF over at playdraft.com or the Draft app, use the promo code PFF, you'll get a free $3 game. So you get that free $3 game, chance to win real money once you make your first deposit. So you go to playdraft.com, go to Draft, make your first deposit, promo code PFF, get a free game. We're all using it over here at PFF, having a ton of fun. My favorite way to draft, you've got the fast draft. You can crank out a draft in under an hour. Just crank right through it. You have a slow draft too if you want to take about 8 hours per pick and just kind of ease through it over a week or so. So multiple ways to play, and games start nonstop. They never stop. So you have games in season. I just played an MLB game the other day for $1, and you can play varying levels of games. So we're all having a ton of fun with it. Be sure to use the promo code PFF. Get yourself a free game over at Play Draft. All right, let's get into some fun quarterback discussion, Zac. We've been going QB by QB this entire summer, and I do suggest everyone goes to the archive, the Big Time Throwcast. Just search PFF Quarterback Podcast or Big Time Throwcast at your favorite podcast provider, and check out the archive. Chances are your favorite quarterback was already broken down in immense detail, about a half hour per QB, from Tom Brady to Aaron Rodgers to Drew Brees, Big Ben, every last one of them. Today we're going to get a little bit more mainstream. We're going to talk about the Jay Cutlers of the world. We're going to talk a little Denver Broncos quarterback competition. So we got some good stuff combining a few quarterbacks. But let's start in South Beach, Zac. We're talking Jay Cutler going to the Miami Dolphins. We did not do an entire Jay Cutler episode because we thought he was moving on. We thought he was moving on to broadcasting, but here he is coming out of that semi-retirement. What were your first thoughts when you heard about Jay Cutler reuniting with his former coach Adam Gase and taking over for now Ryan Tannehill's injured for the season, and Jay Cutler's now the guy in Miami? What were your first thoughts when you heard that one?
I loved it. I think that if Jay Cutler's playing quarterback somewhere, it's always a great storyline no matter where he's at. And obviously we've seen him in Chicago and so many ups and downs, and a lot of people just don't know what to make of him. I think this is a great chance for him to he was moving on into the broadcasting and maybe kind of left a sour taste with some people. He can wipe out a lot of that stuff, with this chance he's got in Miami. So I love the move. I think from a talent standpoint, you're looking at him and you're like, well, they just got a more talented guy and guy that can actually do more things. Now he can win for you. He can also lose some games, as we'll dive into it. But on the surface, man, I love the move.
Jay Cutler's that guy who comes into the league with a cannon for an arm, and there's no denying the the arm strength. I won't necessarily say arm talents, but the arm strength. There's arm talents there too because he's off platform and all that fun stuff. But he's like that classic guy with the big arm who's been through 15 different coordinators in 10 years or whatever it is. And every single year it's like, well, maybe Mike Martz is the guy to get it out of him. Maybe it's Adam Gase. Maybe it's this coordinator. Maybe it's this system. And I think ultimately, and we saw him in Shanahan's system over in Denver where he had some success. But ultimately, I think Cutler just always lands as this middle tier type of quarterback who in any given season could be on the low end, a disastrous type of quarterback. Any reason why he just hasn't been able to put it all together? Because people just assume, okay, if you have this big arm, accuracy will get better, you'll get better over time, you get the right match, and the talent will match the results. And for Cutler, again, he's been solid, he's been okay, but certainly hasn't been a great quarterback throughout his career.
Yeah, he's certainly always been an aggressive guy, and I think a lot of it comes, late in the down or, with some undisciplined pocket movement. We see him drift back in the pocket as much as anybody, and then he doesn't want to let a play die, and so then he wants to show his arm, show that he can make any of those throws, and sometimes it works out, and then sometimes they end up in harm's way. I think that's just kind of his style of play. He's always been that way, like you said, and not sure if he ever will change. That's kind of his personality, just how he plays in general. So you get the good, you get some bad. I still like watching him play. I think he's pretty fascinating kind of case study to watch week in and week out, just because you don't know what you're going to get. He could get really hot and he lights it up, or it could be a day that he's really trying to fit everything in there, and a couple balls get tipped up in the air. So he's definitely gonna leave some dramatic stuff out there for us to see.
If nothing else, he is definitely exciting to watch. Never a dull moment with Jay Cutler. I think at his best, he's been paired with guys like Brandon Marshall, with guys like Alshon Jeffrey, because that YOLO ball style that Jay Cutler plays well with those guys who can go up and get it. I wonder if a guy like Devontae Parker, who has that good size and ball skills down the field, might be able to benefit from that. But let's compare Cutler to what Miami had and what they potentially had. So Ryan Tannehill goes down due to injury, and I think when you look at Tannehill's season last year, and we discussed it, go check out the Ryan Tannehill podcast. Pour out a little liquor for him or something because he's out for the season. Is that what we're gonna do? But go check out the archive, because we talked about Tannehill. He does a lot of things really well. Short area accuracy in our numbers was just outstanding last year. He just, wasn't great in all facets, but he made some good strides last year. Cutler will not bring that same short area accuracy, so it's going to be a different style between Cutler and Tannehill. But then there's Cutler versus Matt Moore, and Matt Moore is like this universal top 5 backup quarterback every year. We got to see him start some games last year. He held his own. I think he's always performed pretty well when given the opportunity. First off, is Cutler – I don't think Cutler's an upgrade to Ryan Tannehill, but I'll let you answer that. And is Cutler even an upgrade to Matt Moore? How do all of those styles compare and contrast? And what's Miami really getting compared to what they had or what they could have had?
I think production-wise, almost all three of these guys are pretty similar, just obviously doing it their own way. Matt Moore – the guy's ultimate, is he a starter? Is he a backup? Is he, he's a great spot starter. I think with him, it could be durability issues and reason why they don't just roll with him. He's got such an aggressive style of play. Late in the play, we saw against Pittsburgh last year, he takes a few just huge shots. I think that's just kind of, he's a gritty kind of backup, wants to, make every single play happen. And so I think that the durability, plus he's not the biggest guy. So I think that could be a little bit of a factor into why they don't just roll with Matt Moore, because he's a good player and he can definitely, you can definitely get some good production out of him. And then Tannehill, Cutler, I think that, I kind of prefer, Tannehill is much more stay within the offense and he gets through progressions well. There's not much moving off the spot. We talked on the podcast about just more out of structure plays for Tannehill. And then you got a guy like Jay Cutler that makes those out of structure plays. It's just, can he stay within the flow like Tannehill was showing last year and really got better towards the end of the year. So, you got the different styles. I think production-wise, you may end up fairly similar as long as Cutler can cut down on some of the turnover-worthy plays. He had that really good year with Gase. I don't know if it's just you hear about them being close off the field and maybe there's a little trust factor and he likes his offense. He likes how everything flows within that offense, and I can see that. And maybe that's going to keep him more, playing in structure. So it's definitely, interesting. But I think production-wise, there's not a whole lot of difference what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mentioned this on previous podcasts, but I love how sometimes you get beyond the physical skill set and get into a guy's mind. And, sometimes like Cam Newton, his off-field mannerisms, bit of a roller coaster sometimes, actually shows up on the field. For Cutler, is that part of the case? Does he need, certain motivation to play well? Because, we've seen plenty of seasons throughout his career. Like I said, he looked good under Shanahan. He looked good in 2013 with the Bears. 2015 with the Bears. Under Gase, he looked better. He looked reasonable. So you mentioned the turnover-worthy plays, and I think that's the story. When people go back to look at the Adam Gase year in 2015, looking at the 2 years surrounding that, and again, turnover-worthy plays, those are those passes that should be intercepted, whether they are or not, bad decisions or just really inaccurate passes where the defender has a better shot to catch the ball than the offensive player. 2014, so the year before Gase, Cutler had the 11th highest percentage of turnover-worthy plays. Enter Adam Gase in 2015, then he's 30th highest. So he did a much better job of taking care of the ball. And then last year, Adam Gase is gone, moves on to Miami, and Cutler, in his limited time, second highest percentage of turnover-worthy plays. So maybe it's just as simple as that. Like you said, it's, he wants to play for Gase maybe just a little bit more. He's going to put a little bit more into it. But, man, Gase, for whatever reason, had him taking care of the ball just a little bit better in 2015.
Yeah, those are great stats. And it's going to be interesting to see just if that is something that truly within Gase's system it makes him such a QB-friendly guy, because you saw Tannehill get better at the end of last year once he got more familiar with the system. You see the guys in Chicago last year playing in the same system, different coordinator with Dow Loggins, but same system, got a lot of production out of those guys. So all three guys that were playing. So really, maybe this Adam Gase system is really good, and it makes sense for quarterbacks. I know it makes sense just watching it on the surface, and without knowing the finer details of the thing, everything just flows nicely. It's got they spread it out. They do a good job of game planning week to week. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I think it's cool that Cutler's got a chance to kind of change his narrative of. He's going to go in the broadcast booth, whether it's after this year or the next year, whatever it is. But people could have a totally different perception of him, when after this season's done or whatever his stunt in Miami's done. So maybe we'll see some rah-rah out of Jay Cutler. I don't know if we'll get to that point, but he's definitely got to kind of win those teammates over in Miami and earn some trust.
I'm going to say this about Adam Gase. I think when you look at certain coordinators, one of my favorite things to do is compare the PFF grade, which is, the quality of the throw and sometimes how easy or difficult the throw is, and then the statistical results. For the most part, Adam Gase's quarterbacks have done better statistically than they've graded. So, 2013 he had Peyton Manning, a record-breaking season. Peyton played great, and the stats matched up. But 2014 was the first year we actually saw a decline in Peyton Manning's play. If you look at the first half, even in the first half when he was putting up great numbers, our grades were saying, he's a top tier, he's more of a top 10 to 15 quarterback. The stats were saying he's one of the best, he's the top one or two quarterbacks in the league. So in other words, 2014, Peyton's stats looked way better than he played. 2015, you have a similar story, I think, with Cutler. And then last year with Tannehill, the stats were as good as Tannehill's ever had. And while he did make a lot of strides and he did a lot of things well, again, it wasn't like he crushed it from a grade standpoint. So as far as Cutler and his production, perhaps that bodes well. Chip Kelly's another guy who through the years, he had the 2013 season with Nick Foles when he had 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. That was a season where the scheme was leading to those stats more than Nick Foles' play. And Chip Kelly has done a good job through the years. He did the same thing last year with Colin Kaepernick, making the stats look good or better, making the stats look better than the quarterback actually played. So there are certain coordinators who have that history. Throw Kyle Shanahan in that mix. It looks like we're putting Gase kind of in that, in that group as well, as a guy that can elevate the play of his passing offense, even if the quarterback's not doing an outstanding job.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it looks like. I'm curious what that system is in terms of how they call things and the length of play calls, if how simple it is at the line of scrimmage and whatnot, because that's a lot of the toughest battle in the NFL is, can I simplify it for the QB to where he's not having to bark out every single thing that the receivers have to do, and just kind of slow down the mental process before the ball's snapped. And that's what it looks like, on paper and on tape. But it's hard to know the exact details. I'm guessing that it's a fairly simple, code words and those types of things, just so guys can play fast and just react and let it rip.
Perhaps lost in all this, Miami's going to have a serious quarterback decision at the end of the season. Ryan Tannehill, they have to make a decision on bringing him back. We know the price of, a middle-tier quarterback. We'll call Ryan Tannehill a middle-tier quarterback. The price is extremely high these days, $15, $20 million range. So that's going to be a storyline to keep an eye on. What Cutler does with Gase this year, what they do with Tannehill next year, and then you have this draft where we talked about it on the last Pro podcast when we went through all of the NFL draft prospects, which I do suggest you guys go check out in the archive, and we give you a little breakdown on the quarterbacks to look for in the NFL draft, and there's as many as 5, 6, 7 of them who at least have first-round potential, and their performance this coming season will determine just how many QBs go in the first round. So a lot of interesting storylines surrounding Miami, and Jay Cutler will make things very interesting this season. Let's move on to some other quarterback play. I think Tyrod Taylor is a guy, again, we didn't get to him as far as the full show breakdown goes, but a lot to discuss about Tyrod. The Buffalo Bills had to make a decision. You have Sean McDermott coming in as the new head coach. It's a whole new regime, and they spent a while to make their decisions on Tyrod Taylor. Is he a guy that you're trying to build around? Is he a guy that is a bridge to the next quarterback? I think even, whether you like Tyrod Taylor or not, I think the fact that the Buffalo Bills are going to be out and about looking for the next quarterback is, no secret. They should be looking for another quarterback. I don't think Tyrod's necessarily the guy that you are locking in for the next 5 or 6 years. I do think there are parts of his game, though, that are okay to win with. That what you're going to get from Tyrod. So give me that overview of Tyrod Taylor. You and I both watched him very closely over these last few weeks. Grade-wise, he's performed well in the PFF system. I think there are certain reasons for that. I don't think he does it in a traditional manner all the time. So what are your thoughts on Tyrod, some of the good and some of the things that he could still stand to improve?
Yeah, I'm with you. You can definitely win with him in terms of being that locked-in guy that, yes, we're going to build around. It's really hard to say that just because from down to down, the consistency to win in the pocket is not there. Now, he's got some of the other stuff when he scrambles and gets on the move, but it's really hard to just formulate an offense, predicated not primarily, but a lot of the time on out of structure plays. And so that's the main thing when you watch him. You get a little frustrated because you see him do it, and you can tell he's trying to be that pocket passer and win from the pocket, work through progression, slide and move and keep his eyes up. But it comes down to, he's played a certain way his entire career or entire life. When he was 8 years old playing, he was always faster than everybody. He found out probably early that he could take off and run, and those habits are so hard to break when you've played that style all along. And you could see him fighting those, kind of inner demons to stay in the pocket. But it sometimes doesn't happen as smoothly. And I think his accuracy suffers big time when he is resetting his feet and kind of knowing that he should stay within the pocket and try to make a throw. I think that's when you see some of the poor throws. So I think there's obviously a lot to like with him still. Deep ball stuff, go balls kind of bails him out at times, but just overall down to down consistency and winning from the pocket is always going to be a little bit of an issue.
Man, you summed it up well. I have the exact note. You talked about his ability to reset his feet and win within the pocket. My note is just that he looks off balance in the pocket. I mean, think about you keep going back to your Bradys and Breezes and just the Peyton Mannings, these guys who are just technically sound in the pocket, and they get through their progressions and they're just always balanced and ready to throw. With Tyrod, it wasn't that he couldn't get to that next progression. He was looking there. He just wasn't always set to throw, or he would have dropped his eyes just a touch. I think quick game wise, he's just a tick late. Just doesn't have that confidence to see it and let it go all the time in the quick game. So I think when you add up all this stuff, the way I described Tyrod, he's not the guy that you could say, hey, you're going to throw the ball 40 times today, and you're going to lead a bunch of 10-play drives and move up and down the field, making good decision / accurate throw over and over and over again. I just don't think that he's that guy. But you mentioned the deep ball, and I feel like that's classic Tyrod Taylor, is he's just kind of lulling you to sleep. He's not playing great for 2 or 3 quarters, and then he drops this perfect 50-plus yard bomb in stride, and it's 7 points. So I think he has a little bit of – he has boom or bust to him, but in a different way. I usually describe boom or bust as a guy that has the high big-time throws, the high turnover-worthy throws. I think because of Tyrod's style, he doesn't force a ton of plays into coverage. He's not going to put the ball in harm's way a ton, but his boom or bust style is that you're going to get just some really bad, ugly drives, and then you'll get some quick drives, some quick strike action. So, it's almost there's not a whole lot of players, I think, that are exactly like Tyrod Taylor. So I think you just have to know what you're working with when you have them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that, it gets frustrating because you want him to stay in there on some plays or the middle of the field, whether it's his size or he's just not real confident seeing that sometimes, which it's hard. There's a lot of bodies in there. You see him bail out right when you maybe could have gotten, because he does have a good feel in the pocket in terms of sliding around guys and very instinctive. But like you said, it's just kind of when your mind's moving fast and you get off balance, resetting your feet, that stuff is the hardest thing to do when you're, trying to win from the pocket. When you're an instinctive guy like him, is can you remain poised while doing that? And those plays when he could stay in there, he ends up bailing out, and then it's a throwaway because nobody's open on a scramble, and then it's 2nd and 10, and you're trying to stay ahead of the chain. So it gets tough. But then he does then you see the Seattle game where he's scrambling out, and almost every single time it's one-on-one coverage on the outside, and guys are working back down to the sideline, and he's putting those balls right on the money on the sideline. So there's plays there that you're like, okay, but it's just so hard to rely on those out of structure, on the move plays, stick throws on the sideline, down to down. But shoot, there's the games that it shows up like Seattle, and he ends up playing really well, but it's just hard to get that week to week.
Yeah, I mean, you have to add the rushing element to it. That's a factor as well. He ran for 577 yards last year, 566 the previous year. That's a lot. He's run for 10 touchdowns. With that, he held the ball longer than any quarterback in the NFL. So we talked about how he's unsure in the quick game and he likes to extend plays. It shows up in his time to throw. The longest time to throw, highest time to throw in the league last year at 3.35 seconds. The other thing that comes with that are the sacks. When you hold the ball that long, not only are you putting more pressure on the offensive line to hold blocks longer, but then he takes far too many sacks. And again, one of the things I think that I love that we do at PFF is we try to assign proper blame on sacks. And we're realistic enough to know that offensive linemen are not supposed to hold their blocks for 3.5 seconds or 4 seconds. So we will assign sacks to the quarterback. Last year, 15 sacks that we assigned to Tyrod Taylor, 8 the previous year. So 15 sacks. He had some games with, he had 4 games where he was assigned multiple sacks. So this is what I'm talking about, the idea of consistent, sustainable drives. there's great research out there as far as how bad sacks are for just sustaining drives. They're just drive killers. And the fact that he is accounting for one a game. He played 15 games last year. He accounted for one per game. Most quarterbacks account for maybe 5, 6, or 7 on the season. That's a huge number, and I think that goes in as well as far as that. He's just a tough guy to really build an efficient pass-heavy offense around. If everything else is looking good, the run game, the defense, because he takes care of the ball, he doesn't make a ton of bad decisions. He was 4th lowest in turnover-worthy plays last year, percentage-wise, and he was really good in 2015 as well. He takes care of the ball for the most part, but it's that idea of sustainable offense when he is the focal point that I think holds him back.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The time to throw stuff is pretty interesting, and then you look at you mentioned quick game earlier, and sometimes not letting it rip and letting it go and seeing it. 35% of his throws were under 2.5 seconds, which was the lowest in the NFL, kind of showing the quick game there. In comparison, Alex Smith, heavy quick game guy, 68%. So ideally, you'd like to be somewhere in between there, and that's just what you get is just the a little bit of indecisiveness and maybe afraid to make a mistake because he's not he's not necessarily playing like some of these guys with big contracts where they're the guy. He's basically kind of a one-to-1 year guy. So maybe that creeps in a little bit as well as he doesn't want to lose the game for guys, and there's a little indecisiveness and it definitely hurts his play at times.
So to sum up Tyrod, I think he is an excellent bridge quarterback. I think he's a guy that, like I just said earlier, if everything else is going well, when he has a LaShawn McCoy in the backfield, and when you use his legs a little bit in the design running game, and when that, if the pass play breaks down, he can move the chains. He can absolutely move the chains, and you don't have to be a perfect passer when you do have that element to you. You can, pick up a few cheap first downs every game. So I think he's a perfect bridge quarterback. I don't think he's the long-term answer in Buffalo. I think Buffalo is going to be scouting this quarterback class really hard going into this college football season. And but he's not the type of guy that I would have said, no, that's it. I'm moving on from him. There's still a lot to like about Tyrod. And like we talked about with the deep ball, that quick strike offense is always there because he throws a pretty deep ball. He hits Sammy Watkins in stride, pretty often to create those big plays. So a lot to like about Tyrod, but I still don't think he's the long-term answer in Buffalo.
I'm with you. I think he's, there's just not enough there to rely on a guy like that. And it's too bad because he does make some good plays. But, like you said, they're going to be scouting the heck out of this next class and seeing what they got.
We're going to get into some Denver Broncos quarterback play. But before we do, I want to tell you guys about some beer. That's right, a new beer app called Tavour. Love these guys. I got to spell it out for you guys because I didn't say it right on the last podcast. Tavour. Tavour. Get the app. All you have to do is get the app, and they will give you some beer options to purchase, remote beer purchases on the app. You can choose whatever beers you want on a daily basis. They'll give you 2 notifications per day to let you know when a new beer is purchased. And then you can buy beer that's not even available in your area. They work with 400 independent breweries around the world. And it's not just a beer of the month club. You only pick the beer that you want. You sign up. There are no monthly commitments, no subscription fees. You just pick the beers that you want. You choose a delivery date. It could be as soon as 1 week or as late as 5 weeks. And all beer is shipped with one flat fee, whether it's 1 beer or 300 beers. So you just kind of stock up on all the beers you want. You're throwing a big party. You could do it months in advance, make one shipment. It's a flat fee, and it's great. Our friends over at Tavour, they sent us some beer, and it is all outstanding. So we suggest you guys go ahead and do that too. It's Tavour, Tavour. Get that app today. All right, on to the Denver Broncos. And your boy, Trevor Siemian. I don't know if he's the guy that we've covered more than anyone else on the Big Time Throwcast, but you have some strong thoughts about Trevor Siemian. Not necessarily all negative, but just strong thoughts about what he is. He's just this this guy where, Zach, when you describe Siemian, maybe more than any other quarterback, you just see what he is extremely clearly. So I'm going to let you get into that, and we're going to break down this whole Trevor Siemian versus Paxton Lynch battle for the starting quarterback job in Denver. Give me your high-level thoughts on Siemian and what he is, and if he's the guy that should be running the show in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been fun to follow just because it was so out of left field when he ended up winning the job last year, and you had, obviously Paxton Lynch needed some time, but you had Mark Sanchez there that was a capable guy, and then you look at Siemian's game, how he was in college, and then trying to figure out how it would work in the NFL. And first thing you look at is his arm is really good when he's throwing confidently in rhythm, trusting what he sees. I mean, he's one of the better pure passers in the NFL. He spins it as good as anyone. It's just when things aren't matched up exactly to his eye and how he wants to see it pre-snap is when things go a little haywire and you get some poor decisions thrown into coverage and things like that. But very much a timing, rhythm, stick thrower. Everything outside the numbers is clear to him, and outbreakers and stick routes. And then you get in the middle of the field, and when concepts are kind of being required to read high to low in the middle of the field, and those things get a little dicey. So that's kind of what I see when I'm watching them, and I think there's definitely an offense to build a scheme, to build a scheme around. You just have to scheme really, really well week to week because there is a fair amount of predeterminist to his game.
Yeah, how do you do that? I mean, we talked about this on previous podcasts. Is it just how much more pressure does that put on the offensive coordinator to call the right play? Because I've heard you describe it too, where you say, okay, an Andrew Luck, who can do, he's full field read guy. You just say, okay, I'm going to throw a lot on Andrew Luck's plate, and I can call any play, and I'm going to trust that he can find success within any play. Whereas with the Siemian, how much harder does the offensive coordinator have to work to just get looks that match up? Because the way you've described it before is when the looks match up, there are guys like Trevor Siemian, because he throws the ball well and he can throw accurately when he's confident, they can have success. How do you get those plays to match up though? And what if you just have a bad game play calling?
Yeah, I know that, and it could be as simple as that. The intuitiveness that the play caller has to have for what coverage they're getting, and you're playing the percentages on 3rd and 7. We've seen them play 2-man 77% of the time this year, or whatever it is, and then you're matching up your play calls to get that, but then they come out with a completely different look. Then your QB's gotta make a play and find a throw somehow, and that's what separates all those guys at the top of the league is just no matter the look, no matter what the defense is moving around post snap, whether they're disguising blitz. They're going to find the completion. They're going to be able to move in the pocket. I think Siemian's pocket movement and things were, not very good last year. And the offensive line certainly did not help. But there are some times where he can, move within the flow of the offense and slide in the pocket, and it just doesn't show up that much. But it is hard to call plays in general. But I think when you got a guy like Siemian, it makes it a little bit tougher even.
He was our number 30 quarterback in the NFL last season in the PFF grading. Statistically, it wasn't terrible, but I think, when you look at, today's numbers, an 84.6 passer rating, that's below average. It's below the NFL average. 18 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, but even that 84.6 maybe a little bit higher than it should have been. There were some bad games in there for Siemian. The one thing that we always pointed out, when you look at his passing map, there is this fascinating breakdown where he graded below average or poorly to almost all parts of the field, except randomly deep down the field to the left. And there were some games, was it the Bengals game, where it was like he was struggling the whole time and he chucks 2 great deep balls down the field, and it's like, all right, we saved the game. But 420 yards on 29 attempts, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. So passer rating of 108.1 deep down the field to the left. Compare that to deep down the field in the middle. His passer rating was 6. We allowed it to go below the 39.6 standard. And deep down the right, his passer rating was 50.8. but randomly deep down the field to the left, 108.1. Any reason for this, or is this just a lucky coincidence?
I don't know. He does throw that deep ball, that go ball to the left, especially with some good arc, and he drops it in there, and he gives a guy like Demaryius Thomas a chance to at least make the catch. Sometimes it's right on the money, sometimes it's in a back shoulder-ish, where he can jump up and make a play, but it bailed him out a lot of times last year, Kansas City game as well. So there's definitely something to his go balls to the left. I don't know how you try to scheme against it in clutch moments, but it seemed like they came up in clutch moments as well, fourth quarter, late in games. So Siemian go balls to the left, dial it up, and dial it up often.
I don't think that's how it works, but hey, maybe it's worth a shot because it was just such an extreme number out there. Unfortunately, I hate to pick on Siemian because he was a 7th-round pick, and if you get any reasonable starts out of a 7th-round pick, I mean, that's a success. You were a 7th-round pick, right?
No doubt. Yeah, I was 7th round. Yeah, I mean, shoot, he's far better than I would have been in there. So
right, how much better is Trevor Siemian than you? Let's break that down.
He's more accurate thrower, I think, in terms of seeing the game. I think it's very similar, and that's maybe why, maybe why I can relate a little bit to what he's seeing out there, is because I think it's fairly similar to how I played the game as well. So, there's definitely still some good stuff. What you see him throw, these timing, play action, skinny post routes, and he's got a lot of zip on it, and he's very accurate. Like we said, he spins it as good as anybody when he's throwing confidently and trusting what he sees. It's just a matter of, can you get that enough over the course of an entire game, and how many times is he going to have to get to that second guy, and can he do it smoothly and remain accurate? Right. Is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I hate to trash him because he was a 7th-round pick, and for a 7th-round pick, he performed fairly well. But I think when you break down the Broncos' 2016 season, you're looking at a defense, had they gotten into the playoffs, was probably still the best defense in the playoffs. They rode that defense to a Super Bowl win in 2015 with Peyton Manning, who honestly played worse that year than Trevor Siemian did. He had his moments, but top to bottom played worse than Trevor Siemian did last year. And, the offense essentially held them back. It kept them out of the playoffs. So now they're going to have, I don't know if the defense will be as good, but it's still going to be the strength of the team. And the battle is Trevor Siemian versus second-year former first-round pick Paxton Lynch. How do these guys stack up? Because I know it sounds like we're trashing Siemian, but he still might be the best option over Paxton Lynch as far as where Lynch is right now in his development.
Yeah, I think so. I think Siemian, as much as we just talked about it, there's more there than Paxton Lynch, I think, at this point, because Paxton Lynch has maybe some of the similar issues, but just not as consistent as an accurate thrower as Siemian is. So, there's things that obviously you love with Paxton Lynch's arm, and you see outside the numbers, and he can rip it when he sees it clearly. And you saw some of those things when he came in off the bench against Tampa Bay. You're like, oh shoot, he's made a lot of progress since the preseason. Maybe he's further along than you think, and then you see him get a start against the Falcons, and kind of everything came crashing down. Didn't play all that well that game, right. Which he's a rookie quarterback, and you expect those things. But what he showed off the bench against Tampa Bay wasn't necessarily what he showed in his 2 starts when he was the guy going into that week. And so there's so much I guess just uncertainty with what Lynch can do right now, because he's not a exactly pinpoint accurate passer when the look's even clean. So I think that's where Siemian has the upper edge. If they kind of have both their limitations with some of the other stuff, Siemian is the more accurate guy when the look's what you want.
Paxton's an interesting evaluation for me because I started following him right when he was coming out of high school. He was a late target for the Florida Gators as just a 2-star recruit, so an unheralded recruit. But if you even just watch his high school film, you're like, wow, this guy's 6'6", 6'7", moves around pretty well. There's some potential there. Florida missed out on him. He goes to Memphis, and he got better every single year. He was a guy I followed throughout his career because I thought he was just this interesting guy that had the quote-unquote upside, and he was pretty good as a freshman, and he got better as a sophomore and better as a junior. So even though I was watching him early in his career, and I saw him continue to progress, and I liked him overall, I feel like I liked him as a second or third round type of pick rather than a first round pick.
Yeah.
And that's where I am with that's just where I am with Paxton. He went from a guy that I liked to a guy who I had to say, okay, let's pump the brakes. I don't know that he's truly this first round pick. And then how big of an adjustment is that, coming out of that Memphis offense? Because, just finding usable plays to scout him coming out of Memphis, you had to sort out about 30% of them, the bubble screens and all the
sprint
all the dink and dunk stuff. He had the most designed rollouts of any quarterback in the draft class that year. But you had to sort out all those plays just to get a couple intermediate downfield throws that are a little bit more NFL-like. How big was that adjustment? Because I thought that was going to be the biggest thing for him coming out of college.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that offense, along with the Baylor and those types of offenses, are so hard to scout guys. Just, you see the spread with the Texas Tech, and at least some of those guys are working through some legit progressions, and they're having to see the middle of the field and high-low combinations. But this system was very hard to pull plays out of to see exactly what it would look like, which I think, if you're John Elway, he's looking a lot at just, all the arm talent and all those things and hoping that they could mold him into a good quarterback, because there wasn't a whole lot of plays that would say that. So he's got all the tools. It looks like, he's such a long guy, kind of gangly, that there's a lot of moving parts we've talked about. And,
tall guys.
Tall guys getting everything together and getting everything right to where he can be accurate. I think you watch him throw on the move, and he's just not very confident for how much he does scramble around, because he's an athletic guy, but when he does move around, he does not throw all that well on the move. And I think that's kind of goes to show just he's got a lot of moving parts, and getting everything all lined up and in the right direction sometimes he struggles with.
Just like you can relate to seventh-round quarterbacks who have some limitations in their games, I can relate to tall, inconsistent throwers. That's what hits home with me. Those guys that are tall. I didn't hit my peak till about 27 or 28. That's why I told everybody, have some patience with Brock Osweiler. 27, 28 years old, he's going to hit his peak as a tall thrower. Maybe Paxton Lynch. You need that little extra bit of patience, because when there are so many moving parts, sometimes the big tall guys like us, we develop just a little bit later. And I'm not trying to be funny here. It is actually a thing. Even if you look at Randy Johnson in baseball, he was throwing the ball. He was all over the place, and he didn't figure out until he was 27 or 28 years old. So, maybe those 6'7" plus quarterbacks need a little bit more time before people give up on them. Let's talk as far as this year. Do you think this is Siemian's team? Do you think it's Paxton Lynch's team? Do you think the Broncos want this to be Paxton Lynch's team? And do you believe the rumors? I've seen some rumors that they're trying to trade for A.J. McCarron of the Cincinnati Bengals. What does that say about where they feel they are with Siemian and Paxton Lynch, if that rumor's true?
Yeah, I think, getting to the first question, I think it is probably going to be Siemian's team, unless he does something in a preseason game that basically, plays his way out of the competition, basically like Mark Sanchez did last year in the preseason. He had two really bad mistakes, and before that it looked like he was the guy, and then Kubiak had enough, and he went with Siemian. So I think it's kind of the similar situation. Does the team want Siemian? You see on tape a lot of the times Emmanuel Sanders and some of these receivers getting very frustrated with what's going on, and I think they lost some confidence in what he was doing, and it ultimately, led to him playing poorly personally. So they want Paxton Lynch. I don't know if he's ready to go down and be a consistent passer and all those things like we were saying. But if they were looking at A.J. McCarron, I would have liked that move, but it's too late in the game now. If that was a move that they made, maybe after OTAs, or maybe they saw enough from Paxton in OTAs and it just hasn't translated into what they had hoped to training camp so far. So I like McCarron over both those guys, but It's pretty late in the game now to try to get that in the mix.
Yeah, I would imagine it's very difficult. Even though a guy like Sam Bradford handled the late trade to a completely new system pretty well last season. Bradford's used to learning a new language every year anyway. Just how difficult would that be for a quarterback to come into a completely new system, learn the new terminology, get on the same page with his receivers, if something like that came about? Just how difficult is that process in general?
Yeah, that'd be tough, and it would be more of an awkward situation too if you're the new guy coming in town, because none of those guys got hurt. They're just straight up don't feel good about them going into the season with them. So not to mention all the terminology and language would be far different because AJ McCarron's in the West Coast offense right now. The terminology with Mike McCoy's system would be different, even from calling the formations and the protections and the plays. So it would be very hard, I think, in terms of that, not to mention the awkwardness that would kind of come with that.
So there you have it. That is our breakdown of the Denver Broncos quarterback situation. Still going to have a really good defense, and they just need somebody to hold the fort at quarterback. Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, maybe even the A.J. McCarron rumors. We've been doing this for almost a year now, Big Time Throwcast. We appreciate everybody that's been listening. Welcome those on the Pro Podcast who have not heard us yet. Would love to get your feedback because we're having a ton of fun diving deep into not only the PFF grades, the analysis, but just what's happening schematically with these quarterbacks. Zach's insight is second to none, so we hope that you guys continue to listen. Hit me up at PFF_Steve on Twitter with your feedback. Zach is at Zac, Z-A-C, _Robinson5 on Twitter. Hit him up with your feedback as well. And then don't forget about the amazing PFF products that we have. It is fantasy football season, and I promise you, you do not need anything besides PFF Edge or PFF Elite. We have some great deals for you guys to get either of these products. Let's start with profootballfocus.com/FanDuel17, profootballfocus.com/DraftKings17. All you have to do is go to either FanDuel or DraftKings through these links, make your first deposit, and you will get a free PFF Edge. That's all you have to do. So sign up, FanDuel and DraftKings, you'll get a free PFF Edge, and then you have a shot at a free PFF Elite. All you have to do there, it might be even easier, you go and leave a 5-star review for either the Big Time Throwcast or the Pro Podcast. Little trick here, you could do it for both podcasts. Leave that 5-star review, leave an email address, leave a Twitter handle, some way that we can get in touch with you, and we're going to pull a raffle for a free Elite every single week. So we've been giving away a $200 PFF Elite product every single week. All you have to do is leave the 5-star review. I suggest, like I said, go to the Pro Podcast, leave one there. Go to the QB Podcast, leave one there. And we'll give away that $200 product. PFF Elite is loaded with fantasy tools and analysis, award-winning fantasy tools and analysis. It has the new PFF Draft Guide, preseason draft guide, first ever. It has our player grades, and it has PFF signature stats back from the grave and available to the public for the first time in 3 years. So those are the ways to connect to us. PFF Edge, PFF Elite, 2 different products that roll all of these goodies into one. Be sure to check them out. That'll do it for us this week. For Zac Robinson, I am Steve Palazzolo. We'll talk again next week all about your favorite quarterbacks.